Hey guys, everything new under the sun. Well, I'm completely overwhelmed by all the stories of economic trouble. And, I look at zerohedge.com, for example, and you could do a whole video about every single one of the articles. There's just so many points of failure, so many warning signs in the world economy, in the U.S. economy, for Western economies, etc. There's banks having trouble. There's problem with interest rates. There's debt level. There's GDP numbers. There's slowing of economy. All sectors of the economy are slowing down. The housing sector is ready for a massive slowdown. You have these investors and these big money guys saying, it looks like the exact situation as just before the 2008 crash, and in fact the factors are even in worse shape. There's less bullets, there's less ammunition that the central banks can use to resolve it this time, because they used them up the first time around. And there's just so many articles related to this. It's incredible. I look at them and I'm overwhelmed. Like, how do I put this all together? Like, this is just, there's so much stuff out there, and it's almost like sometimes we don't really realize how big of the problem, how big the problem really is. And of course, the bigger the problem is, the harder it's going to fall. And indeed, I think that's what God is storing up. I think He's storing it up. I think He's not letting it fall at this point in time, because He has a specific calendar, a timeline of prophetic events. And when it does go down, it's going to go down very hard, where quite literally it ends up being, the end of the world for Western powers, for North America, for all the countries that aren't ruled by military or dictators. Well, here's another one that you won't see in the mainstream media news, and so I bring it to you. This is from zerohedge.com. Iran's currency craters most on record amid panic scramble into U.S. dollars, and this is going to make Iran even more desperate and even more interested in going after the spoils, as it's recorded in Ezekiel 38, of Israel. Israel's a very prosperous nation. They've got oil, they've got water, they've got all the good stuff. And of course, these other Arab nations, even though their land masses are 100 times larger than the area of Israel, they still want to invade Israel and take its spoils. And here's an example of Iran, who is in trouble in terms of economic collapse, and they need money. And so they're going to go to war. What happens when you get into an economic situation? Most countries in history, when you get into economic collapse situation, you go to war, because war is one of those things where you can at least take someone else's money, take their wealth, or distract away from your economy, and you can kickstart the economy basically by creating jobs, by creating weapons, etc. And so many countries in history, when given an economic crisis, they simply go to war. And I think that's exactly what we're going to see here. And this is, you can kind of see the dominoes falling. You can kind of see God pulling the strings, saying, okay, time is getting close. Let's start pulling the rug out from under these nations. Let's get them ready, and these are all things that are getting the nations ready for war. One more thing to concern the citizenry and the government. One more thing to get them into a position where they are ready to go to battle, and they will be ready in short order. Iran's rial flashed lower on Sunday against the U.S. dollar, and panicked Iranians scrambled where? Well, into the U.S. dollar, into the great Satan's U.S. dollar, interestingly, amid deepening economic woes and the imminent return of full U.S. sanctions. Isn't it interesting? The Rouhani government must just absolutely hate this, that they're scrambling and flooding into the great Satan's money, fiat currency, because their own economy is going down, and they consider it a safe haven. And now if I were them, I might be getting into gold and silver, but right now gold and silver are being suppressed, manipulated. Their full value isn't realized with all the paper money that's flooding into the markets. Gold and silver should be worth a lot more at this point in time, but it's manipulated because in the it's electronically traded on the stock markets. That means they can change the price of it at will, basically. Well, the unofficial black market rate stood at 102,000 reals by mid-Sunday, according to a website Bombast, and confirmed by to AFP by a currency trader. The real lost half of its value against the U.S. dollar over the last 4 months, breaking through the 50,000 to 1 mark in March for the first time. In April, Tehran deployed a series of measures to try and stop the slide, including firing the governor of the central bank, fixing the real at 42,000, and threatening to crack down on the black market traders. And how do you crack down on black market traders? I mean, that's the kind of the point of the black market. It's almost unstoppable. But the selling continued as Iranians have panicked about the prolonged economic downturn, turning to dollars, U.S. dollars, as a safe way to store their savings or an investment in the hope that the real will continue to drop. With banks often refusing to sell their dollars at artificially low rate, the government has been forced to soften its line in June, allowing more flexibility for certain groups of importers. The handling of the crisis was one of the reasons behind last week's decision by Rouhani to replace the central bank chief, Valaya Saif. So when things get hard, they just start firing people. But it's incredible here. Iran's annual inflation rate stands at 203%. Does that sound like kind of like Venezuela? I think their inflation rate is like 1,000,000% or something. Not 1,000,000%. Well, 1,000,000 to 1 or something like that. It's some massive, ridiculous number where basically the bolivar, the Venezuelan dollar, is absolutely worthless, and they're trying to create a new fiat currency, basically, and that is the outcome of every fiat currency: a death, a slow death, but a death nonetheless, and they always die because they're not actually worth anything. So it always depends on what the consumers think it's worth, what they're willing to trade, basically, and how much faith they have in that fiat currency. Well, guys, I'm going to leave it there. It's an interesting article. Go read it. But Iran's economy is failing. This is going to push them into war. This is going to fulfill the prophecy about taking the spoil in Ezekiel 38. So isn't it interesting that when you see their economy going down, this is one reason to say, oh, that makes sense why they're invading Israel. And in fact, spoil does mean spoil. They're going after the oil. They're going after the money because their own economy is going down the drain. And I also think it's very fascinating that they're collecting U.S. dollars. The great Satan is U.S. The little Satan is Israel. Well, like I say, I'll leave it there, guys. Check out the article. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.